Good morning, student. The topic for today is the exchange of the gases or the breathing. It is the process where the organism exchange the gases. That is, if in the aerobic respiration, oxygen is taken in and the carbon dioxide is removed out. Whereas in other type of the respiration, only the carbon dioxide which produce is diffused out or liberated. So the different organism has a different methods of intake of oxygen and expulsion of carbon dioxide. If we consider the unicellular organisms like the amoeba or the other unicellular organism, they just take the gases by simple diffusion, that is from higher concentration to lower concentration. Outside the oxygen is in more concentration. When it diffuses in, that is being used up, get converted into carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide inside the cell is in higher concentration, that diffuses out. This is the simple mechanism. Although the diffusion is taking place in all the living organisms, but in unicellular it is the simplest process by which they are exchanging. Now if we come to the plant, in case of the plant they have a stomata, that are the minute openings on the surface of the leaf from where the exchange of the gases is occurring, followed by they have some loosely arranged cells on their stems and the branches. They are also called as a lenticels, from where maximum exchange of the gases, that is around 90 to 95% is occurring through the stomata, but some amount is also occurring through the lenticels. These lenticels are also present in the roots of some of the plants which are growing in the stagnant water, or the mangroves rather. So in such cases we find these lenticels on the root also for the exchange of the gases. Now if we coming to the animal point, in animal the exchange of the gases occurs like in fishes through the gills. Gills are the folds of the membrane which are richly supplied with the blood vessels. When the water pass over these folds of the membrane, they are dissolved oxygen, not the oxygen which is of water, that is not the H2O, but the oxygen which is dissolved in the water get diffuses into the bloodstream, and from the blood the carbon dioxide is liberated or the diffused out. So in case of the aquatic organisms, especially the fishes, the rate of the breathing is higher. Very common question is asked why the breathing rate is higher in the aquatic organism. The reason is that the amount of the oxygen dissolved in the water is much less as compared to that of the air. In air it is 21%, whereas in water it is only 14%. The secondly, the water being heavier require more energy to move across the respiratory surface. So more energy is required, they require more oxygen, as well as the amount of the oxygen in the water is less, so they have to breathe. That is why you must have observed fishes take in the water from their mouth and liberate it out from the gill slits or the gill opening, which after passing it from the surface of the gills. Similarly, in our case, the single opening is there, that is from where they inhale and exhale the same gases. So in case of aquatic organism, the rate of respiration is higher, or you can say faster than as compared to the terrestrial animals. Now if we consider in case of insects, we have a small opening on their surface of their body. These small openings which are present on the surface of the body, they leads into tube-like structures known as trachea. Now these trachea further divides to form small tracheoles which are dipped inside their body cavity. In most of the insects, the system is an open type. In open type means the fluid has accumulated within the body cavity, not flowing in the capillaries. So thus from the trachea the gases diffuses into the fluid, and from the fluid the back diffusion into the trachea takes place, and that gases comes out through the spiracle. So this is the mechanism which is taking place in the case of insects. Now coming to the terrestrial organism, they have well developed lungs. These lungs are the complex organs which helps in the, or rather the organ system which helps in the exchange of the gases from the atmosphere which has been in the air. Like the terrestrial organism, the human respiratory system also has a lungs. We have a pair of lungs which are present in the thoracic cavity or the chest cavity. These lungs contains these small sacs or the alveoli which helps in the exchange of the gases. If we see the respiratory system of human, it consists of following parts. The first part is the nostrils. Nostrils are nothing but the opening of the nasal chamber or the nasal cavity. Nasal chamber has a two nostril, one is towards the outer side and other is inside the mouth or in the neck region, that is the pharynx region. If you open your mouth, you find some V like structure or the vula, VULA, that is hanging from the roof of your mouth. That behind that is the opening of your inner nostrils. These vula helps in the closing of the nostrils when we move the food into the pharynx. Sometimes you must see if there is effervescence during the drinking of cold drink. The cold drink is coming from the back, or when you have had sometimes of vomiting, it is coming from the back, then fluid enters the nasal cavity because the vula do not stops the food coming from the back, but when it is moving from anterior region, it shuts, it lifted up shuts or closes the internal nasal passage or the nostrils. Now, nose has a very important function. It has a three major function. Number one, it makes the air wet so that it helps in the easy diffusion because the water will provide it the medium for the diffusion. Secondly, it has a hair which is coated with the mucus. Mucus is a slimy substance. These hairs and the mucus helps in trapping the microbes or the dust entering the body along with the air. So that is called as a filtration of these dust particle, and the microbe is done by these hairs and the mucus which is there. The third thing which is the nostrils or the nasal passage carries out is it brings the air to the body temperature. If the air is warmer, it will cool it. If the air is cool, it will warm it to the body temperature by the exchange of the you can say temperature, because when through the nasal passage, when the air is moving through a concave. Concave means the small chambers or the cavities. When it moves through these curved chambers, it comes in contact with the wall of the nasal passage. So as a result of which, when the air come in contact with the nasal passage, one of the factors is that the dust particle will stick there. Second, there will be the exchange of the water and the heat will take place from this part. Now, the nasal passage opens into a pharynx through the internal nerve. As we move further, the pharynx leads into a larynx, or the first part of the windpipe. The larynx is a cartilaginous structure made up of a cartilage which is also known as a voice box. This larynx has an opening which is guarded by a epiglottis. The epiglottis is a structure which helps in the closing, the lid-like structure which helps in the closing of the opening of the larynx so that the food can slide back, because just behind the windpipe there is a food pipe. So when we ingest the food, the epiglottis closes the opening of the larynx, as a result of which the windpipe closes and the food slides over it into the bag, that is a food pipe. Sometimes when we are speaking or talking during eating, due to the force of the air, the epiglottis open and the food enters the windpipe. That leads to the choking. So that is why it is prescribed not to speak while you are eating the food. Now, the major function of the larynx is to produce the voice or the sound, which has a membrane within the larynx that vibrates or flutters to produce different types of the sounds which we learn, like A, B, C and so on. So these sounds are made into complex words and words are made into a complex sentences. If you do not recognize the sound, you cannot make a complex, like if somebody speaks Urdu or other languages, you cannot recognize because that is adaptive, we have learned it. Now coming to the next part, larynx leads into a trachea. Now in our trachea there is a C-shaped rings are there. Throughout the trachea you will find there is a ring like structure which are in the C shape. Now, why these rings are C-shaped, and the second thing is why they are incomplete. C means incomplete, not a complete ring. So the purpose of this, the rings are there, it do not allow the trachea to collapse. It prevents the trachea from collapsing in the absence of air. In the absence of air, in the such way that if we sneeze or we take the deep breath, there is a negative pressure has been created inside the trachea, which makes the trachea to collapse. Sometimes you must have observed that if you are drinking a cool drink with the straw, which is a weak, if you suck that, the straw that collapses or joins together. So similarly, if the rings are not there, cartilages, our trachea may join together, leading to a choking, and the death may also occur. Now, why it is a C-shaped? It is incomplete on its posterior side. Just I have told you that on the posterior side there is which pipe is running is the food pipe. So at the back of the trachea there is a food pipe. In the food pipe, the food is moving by the movement of peristalsis. Which movement is taking place is the peristalsis. When this peristalsis is taking place, the trachea has to expand and contract. So if the rings would have been a complete, they would have given a hindrance to the contraction and expansion of the food pipe. So to prevent that, the rings are incomplete on the posterior, or you can say towards the food pipe. So this is why these are the question very commonly coming, why these rings are there and why they are incomplete, not complete. Now as the trachea reaches the mid of the chest, it divides into two branches. These two branches are called as a bronchi. Now each bronchi further enters each. They enter each lung. As you can see in the diagram, trachea divides into two. They are entering into each lung. When these bronchi enter each lung, further these bronchi split into smaller tubes. In the left side it divides into two, whereas in the right side it divides into three bronchioles. Now where does it is occurring? It is occurring inside the lungs. After the trachea has reached into the lungs, these bronchi, they divides into further 2 and 3. 2 on the left side, because on the left side we has a cavity where the heart is present. So the left lung is somewhat smaller as compared to the right one. Now these bronchi further subdivides, and last these bronchi divide into primary bronchiole, primary into secondary, secondary into tertiary bronchioles, and tertiary bronchiole leads into a small duct. These ducts are called alveolar duct. What are they called as? A alveolar duct. These alveolar ducts leads into a sac. These sacs are called as alveoli. Now we have about 300 million alveoli in our lungs. Now these alveoli are nothing but the air sac from where the by diffusion exchange of the gases will take place. These alveoli are very thin membranes, very thin. Why they are thin? So that the easy diffusion can take place, and they are richly supplied with the blood capillaries. That is, they are surrounded by blood capillaries. If we see the surface area of all the alveoli taken together, that is around 300 million alveoli taken together, it comes out to be 80 meters square, which is 40 times your body surface area. Body means the surface area of the skin. So this large surface area of the alveoli helps to better exchange of the gases with the, and they are richly supplied with the blood vessels, so there will be a better exchange of the gases with the surrounding. So this is how the exchange of the gases in the lungs is made efficient. This is very common question is coming, how the alveoli are designed for the better exchange of the gases. I again repeat, one, they are very thin membrane that is made up of a single layer of squamous epithelial cells. Secondly, they are richly supplied with blood vessel, so that whatever the gases diffuses in, they can be easily carried to the. Now for transportation, our blood contain a pigment that is called hemoglobin, because when this gases will combines with the hemoglobin, they will flow with the blood fluid. So the blood is flowing at a very fast rate, that is about in every minute it is circulating your body. So if it has to go by diffusion, if there would have been no pigment, the diffusion may have taken a longer time. So to reduce the time to reach the oxygen well in time to each and every cell, our blood contain hemoglobin. And the third thing was there, the alveoli provides the large surface area. More the surface area, more will be the diffusion. So if you can see here, these are the diagram which is showing what is the different parts of the respiratory systems are there. Nasal passage is there, trachea is there, followed by rings of the cartilage is there, lungs are there. Lungs are protected by the ribs, bronchi. Bronchi are divided into bronchiole. Last, the respiratory bronchioles or the alveolar duct, which leads into small sacs like a bunch of a grape into a alveoli. Now this is the passage which is followed by nasal nostrils, that is the opening, nasal passage, then the nasal cavity is there. Nasal cavity opens into the pharynx, pharynx leads into larynx, trachea, bronchi, and the bronchi enters the lungs, where they further divide into primary, secondary, and tertiary bronchi. These primary, tertiary, and secondary bronchi leads into a alveolar duct, and alveolar ducts open into a sac known as a alveolar sac.